I welcome this Council for National and International Commercial Arbitration and CNIC Mediation Center with, in association with the Federation of Telangana Chamber of Commerce and Industry on this webinar. It's about the intricacies of rules relating to arbitration law and the arbitration agreements. We have a esteemed panel here. I'm sure they'll be introduced, Mr. Abhay or the media to this thing is, but we have some very, very eminent people who really understand the arbitration laws, and and this has been the need of the day with so many disputes and resolutions going on across the country and the world. We are very happy to associate with the Council for National and International Commercial Arbitration. It's a Chennai-based organization for organizing this webinar on intricacies of the rules relating to arbitration and the arbitration agreements. Arbitration agreements is often referred to as the foundation stone of arbitration, as it's a method of dispute resolution based on mutual party consent to arbitrate future or current disputes. Let me introduce FTCCI, the Federation of Telangana Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's a 103-year-old organization which started in 1917. It was in both the states of Telangana earlier as the combined state of as FAPSI, and we got re-christianed as the FTCCI after the states, and we have another organization FAPSI for Andhra Pradesh. FTCCI has members of about 2,500 members, with about 150 associations and chambers being part of it, and an indirect membership of at least 25,000. FTCCI has been closely with government on policy issues, interfacing with thought to a range of specialized services and strategic global linkages. It also provides a platform for consensus building and networking on the key issues. During this COVID times, we evolved much better. I mean, from the earlier days, we are moving on to the digital platforms like you're doing right now. And we really did have some successful meetings and seminars conducted on this with various central ministers, state ministers, bureaucrats from the center and the state as well, who have really given us a lot of inputs on what the policies of the government were, and we have represented to both the center and the state governments on various policies that they have come up with, and some of them, I'm proud to say, have been accepted and by the governments in their associated with FICCI and all in the national, and we did well on this. And FTCCI, as you know, I'm not sure if how many of you know if Mr. Abhay Kumar Jain has briefed or not, but we have entered an MOU with Nalsar University. You know, Nalsar being one of the premier law institutions in the country, and we have tied up with Nalsar for setting up an international alternative dispute resolution center with a focus to resolve the commercial disputes, not only to the members of the FTCCI, but also the general public. We have a good space available here on the second floor, about 2,000 square feet, which we would, 2,500, right, which we are looking at this center, and it's going to take some shape in this year, but for the COVID, it should have been in a better shape, but we had to postpone or delay some of the happenings, and Abhay Jain has been working on it with us, and we have various subcommittees like this, where we deal with the taxation laws, like the direct taxes, the indirect taxes, then of course the tourism and travel industry and the like. We have about 10 different committees or even 12 on banking and finance, regulatory bodies, and so, and one of them is with Abhay, who heads our committee as a chairman. And thanks for tying up with us today and bringing us this knowledge here. Thank you very much, and I really apologize for being late for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, sir. Now I call upon our chairman, Sinica's chairman, Mr. D. Saravanan, to give the welcome address and introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Ashok, and thank you, Mr. Karnendra Jasti, and the entire team of Telangana Chamber of Commerce for your introductory remarks. And good evening, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon for few of those from different time zones. On behalf of CNICA and our event associate, the Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry, I am privileged to welcome all the participants for today's webinar. The registrants and participants have been a constant source of support for CNCA to conduct the webinar series. It is my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to you all. Your presence makes us very happy. Today's world is economized by trade, domestic and international, and this trade is facilitated through contracts entered by the parties. Accelerated globalization has almost removed the disparity of required terms between the domestic and international contracts, and thus most of the corporates follow the same principles while drafting and or reviewing the domestic and international contracts. Nuances of language have taken over precedence over the possible intent of the parties to resolve the disputes by way of arbitration. A valid arbitration agreement is based on the parties' consent. Whilst this proposition might at first sight seem rather straightforward, determining the question of whether the parties have consented to arbitrate a particular dispute generally proves difficult. In order to answer this question, a number of issues need to be clarified. Can the parties be deemed to have consented to arbitrate? What types of disputes are deemed to fall within the scope of parties' arbitration agreement? By reference to what law are these issues determined? Do the courts or arbitrators have power to decide over the issues? On the questions of arbitrability of the disputes, it is therefore vital for the parties to be cognizant of how the arbitration wording is interpreted pursuant to the law applicable to these agreements. Consequently, not only in the contract drafting process, but also when seeking to compel or avoid the arbitration agreements, the parties have a stake in knowing the recognized canons of construction peculiar to the arbitration agreements and clauses. The interpretations given by the various Indian high courts and the Supreme Court of India highlight the need to carefully draft the arbitration clauses in the agreement, as at times use of a loose word like may, can, and shall have the right may be fatal to the real intent of the parties to the agreement. That apart, arbitration law is becoming very vast subject involving interpretation of arbitration agreements and arbitration laws due to frequent amendments. It is in the above context, today's topic to the webinar, intricacies of rules of interpretation relating to arbitration laws and arbitration agreements, becomes relevant. Today's resource person on the topic is one of the leading advocates in the Madras High Court, Mr. V.S. Jayakumar. Mr. V.S. Jayakumar enrolled himself in the Bar Council of Tamil Nadu in the year 1977 and associated himself at the renowned tax law firm Messrs. Subbaraya Iyer, Ramamani and Padmanabhan for 10 years. Mr. V.S. Jayakumar was the president of Revenue Bar Association Chennai for the years 2007 to 2009 and held the posts of Vice Chairman and Secretary of All India Federation of Tax Practitioners South Zone in 2008. He was a member of editorial board of Chennai Accountant Study Circle and he was a member of Taxation Advisory Committee of All India Federation of Tax Practitioners Association, Mumbai. Mr. Jayakumar is one of the trustees of the Palkiwala Foundation and one of the directors of Nani Palkiwala Arbitration Center, Chennai. Mr. Jayakumar is one of the trained mediators in the Tamil Nadu Mediation and Conciliation Center attached to the High Court of Madras. Mr. Jayakumar is a good orator and makes his presentation regularly in various seminars, conferences, and webinars. Sinica is very happy to have him here. I'm sure everybody will join me in welcoming today's speaker. Sir, my warm welcome to you and all the participants, including me, are thrilled to hear your presentation on the topic. Now I request Mr. V.S. Jayakumar to deliver his presentation. Thank you, sir.
It gives me a great pleasure to participate in this webinar hosted by Sinica along with the Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry. I thank the organizers, Mr. Ashwakpati, Anand, Saravanan, as well as Mr. Karendra Jasti and Abhay Kumar Jain for giving me this opportunity to deliberate an interesting topic. This topic is chosen by me is because unlike any other laws, civil, criminal, rent control, Hindu law, taxation, and so on and so forth, this is a peculiar law by itself. A fact can become a law. A law can become a fact. It's something I can explain to you. Just now, Mr. Saravanan said, the placing of the word may, placing of the word can in the wrong place can have a different interpretation. The placing of the word only can have a different interpretation. And in substance, I can say that every case law which has come to the court is a law by itself. It is not the law which decides facts. It's the reverse, the fact which decides the law. It's a little peculiar, is this law of arbitration. And this topic is being an interesting one for people who watch this webinar. And personally to me, because it's a very big learning process for me. In these days, the concept of ADR is changing from the concept of alternative dispute resolution into appropriate dispute resolution. Because you don't know whether you should take mediation, whether you should take arbitration, you should take conciliation, or settlement out of court, or stay quiet at home. You just don't know. Because any fact can change the law. In these days of this changing scenario of the concept, it is fit and proper to understand the disputes of arbitration like a wave in a sea, which goes on ebbs and flows. It is said the waves are not as dangerous as the fear of the waves, because you don't know when the next dispute is going to come. So friends, the broad theme of my lecture going to be, what is the role of interpretation of deeds and legislation in conducting arbitration matters? To quote Oliver Wendell Holmes, the young man knows the rules, but the old man knows the exceptions. I am the old man here. So the young people around you, I welcome you all to this seminar or interpretation. May I now request Ashok Pati to proceed with my slide. Slide number 1 is general. Kindly go to slide number 2. You all know, sorry, slide number 2. A document is some writing. The earlier slide. Ashok, earlier slide. A document is something which all deeds are documents, but not all documents are deeds. A deed, therefore, is a particular kind of document which must be in writing, it must be signed, sealed, and delivered. It must either have the effect of transference of an interest, right, or property, or create an obligation binding on some person or persons, or C, confirm some act whereby an interest, right, or property has already been passed. Ashok, next slide, next slide.
Yeah. This one, sir?
So friends, yeah. I have interpretation from a particular person called. The law may be resembled to a nut which has a shell and a kernel within. The letter of the law represents the shell and the sense of its kernel, and as you will be no better for the nut if you make use only of the So you will receive L. Next slide, Ashok. The general rules of interpretation of deeds is most important. The meaning of the document or of a particular part of it is therefore to be sought for in the document itself. Let me give an example. If you're dealing with a construction agreement, the meaning of document will be contained in the document itself as to what do you mean by construction agreement, what do you mean by a project. The next rule is the intention may prevail over the words used if they are capable of more than one interpretation. Supposing a contract says goods, where it means material, and the intention may prevail over the words. The words are goods or material, but ultimately it is construction. So the intention may prevail over the words. And the words are to be taken to their literal meaning. Literal meaning means as you read. If I say Sunday, you understand as Sunday. Then the next rule is what we call trade usages. In the trade, you may have different usages for a particular documentation. For example, if you say kata or if you say patta, which really means a land document, the trade usages, the commercial languages is one of the most important rules. Then you come to a false description does not form or does not vitiate the document. For example, if a document says 30th February, at the same time, document also says last day of the month. Now the question is, it is a false description. There is nothing called 30th February, but the last day of the month is very clear. So one of the English judges, Lord Sumner, says, when the thing is described with certainty, a false description cannot go against the interpretation of the document. Then the literal meaning depends on basic evidence to translate a language. Then, and it is it's a case of doubtful language. Then the Supreme Court has said, how do you tax contract says, on Sunday, we will take possession of a property. That contract should be made workable because even though Sunday is a holiday, supposing Sunday happens to be an Independence Day, the contract should be made work. The deed has to be construed as a whole. That means from the beginning till the end, after the schedule, after it is signed, and so on. The next rule is what we call ejusdem generis rule, where Supreme Court clearly says the meaning of that is words take the color from the words surrounded. In other words, birds of the same feather flock together. If I say conveyance, sale, transfer, and others, the word others should take the color from the words surrounded, which Supreme Court beautifully says birds of the same feather flock together. Ashok, next slide. Ashok, next slide. There are three miscellaneous rules of interpretation which covers normal situation. For example, if everything is directly given, you cannot imply something. An expression of what is implied has no operation. This is the latest judgment of the Supreme Court and National Highways Authority. The Supreme Court categorically says, if everything is clear, there is no question of implied interpretation. Generally speaking, an expressed grant of right or liberty does not the implication of the law. If it involves a grant of a right, the law has to give importance to the grant of a right. Similarly,
expressed stipulations will oust the implication of any provision to the same effect. If the express stipulation says you perform the contract on a particular day, it will oust the law of limitation if not violated. On the right side, you find rules 4 to 5. An expression of one person or thing implies the exclusion of other persons or things of the same class, but which are not mentioned. For example, if it says it will apply only to he or it or they, it will not apply to she, etc. But under General Clauses Act, he includes she. At this point, I would like to tell you, there is no law in India which, and what we call interpretation of act, like in England. Interpretation of Act 1937, England, Ireland, Australia, Singapore, even Nigeria, they are using that. In India, we have only General Clauses Act. So interpretation is a judge-made law. Every arbitrator is a judge, and the judge looks into the document, interprets it in a particular way, and there is nothing called SOP. Every arbitrator has his own rules, own interpretation, application of mind, analytical to the facts of the case. Number 5, the contra preferentum rule is one of the Latin words. Words are to be construed in the case of a doubt against the person or party who used them, provided this construction works no wrong. So you have to bend the language of the words used if there is a doubt. Supposing it's say at the twilight, I'll close the shop. What do you mean by twilight? You don't know, which really means when you lock your premises, you can say twilight and hold in favor of the person who has written the agreement. Ashok, next slide. There are interpretation of documents on normal situation where you can say if there are more than one document, the document should clearly says all the documents will have the same meaning. If one such document is not referred to, the question is, can the arbitrator take a different stand? The normal situation is all transactions should be read together, all agreements to be read in unity, in wholesome, to give effect to the transaction. The variations made in the deed by the court, sometimes the court says that in a case of a rent control, they say, all right, you take 10% more and so on. Any variations made in the deed by the court, not by the parties, will significantly can be considered by the arbitrator while discharging his duties. The evidence to explain patent ambiguity. Suppose there's a very patent ambiguity. You can say this agreement comes to an end on 31st January. But instead of saying that, you can say 32nd January. It's a patent ambiguity. So also, evidence of intention to resolve latent ambiguity, something which is not patent, is negatively can be considered. This latent ambiguity cannot be considered as implied. It has to be expressly ascertained from the very same document. The next rule is intention prevail over words. Supposing I say I am executing a document of agency, but I say I sell. The intention is agency, but I use a wrong word called sale. So the intention has to be seen. As I told you about the nut and kernel, you have to see the kernel and not the nut. On the right side, I have the external aids, user, if there is any inaccuracy, uncertainty or election of means which is option. This exceptional classes should be read to investigate if there's any fraud, misrepresentation, and you have what we call a four-corner rule. A four-corner rule is a rule where a person has not performed a contract in the way intended, but has gone outside the scope of the contract. An exception clause may be ineffective. Something like out of the box. Instead of doing a regular, going in a one, he goes in a normal route. He goes in a one way, but reaches a destination. The King's Bench UK says that the exception clause may be ineffective. Next slide, Ashok. Next slide, please. Rules of interpretation, ordinary words. For example, if you use a technical words, say DOCOMO means do communicate more often, which we didn't know about 10 years ago. do communicate more often was the terminology used for internet connectivity. Unless you know what is DOCOMO, you cannot handle the telecom contracts. So some of the technical words, you should be able to get the technical meaning unless it results in some absurdity from the contract. Supreme Court in the case of transmission had said there are circumstances including correspondences exchange can be looked into to arrive at the real intendment of the parties, original intention of the parties by looking into the business efficacy in order to produce intended results. If you're going for a power project, your business efficacy is to do the power project and not spoil it or close it or just to make money. You don't enter into contract. So the real business efficacy, why do you want to have a power project in this area? What is is it closeness to proximity to various facilities available to the project and so on? The technical terms have legal meaning. For example, if I say sub judice, then it can have a legal meaning, which not necessarily means sub judice means pending in court. So such words should have a legal meaning. The words construed against party using them. Supposing the party consciously uses the word, I do not communicate to you, you can decide without consensus ad idem. Supposing he uses the word. Consensus ad idem under the contract law means both parties should meet eye to eye or mind to mind. If the party uses such words, the words should be construed to honor the contract. Similarly, void or voidable terms, some of them are avoidable, some of them cannot be avoided. Avoid or voidable, nothing but avoid or voidable. Supposing an agreement is to be executed beyond the period of limitation, which is impossible of performance. Supposing without government approval, you do the sand mining. All these are void contracts, voidable subject to approval. So those terms also to be studied by the arbitrator. Doctrine of Cyprus or Cypre. This doctrine means wherever a document can be honored, you honor them. Wherever a document cannot be honored them, what we call doctrine of severability, so that you will get the intention and the purpose of the contract. In Nabha Power case, Supreme Court laid down 5 business efficacy tests, which is what I mentioned to you in the earlier slide of business efficacy. 1, it must be reasonable and equitable. It must be necessary to give business efficacy. And 3, it must be, I'm not able to read it in this screen. It must be capable of clear expression. It must not contract. So next slide, please. The principal rules of statutory interpretation is general rules, which says an act must be construed as a whole. Words that are reasonably capable of only one meaning, you should give. For example, he includes she. An interesting rule called dog did not bark, a doctrine of presumption, that prior legal rule should be retained if no one in legislative deliberations even mentioned the rule or the question of changing it. And this is called extrinsic legislative sources. For example, if your contract is under 40 Act and that has not yet been nullified and continues so on and so forth, this dog did not bark canon comes to rescue to show your contract is still continued by 1940 or 1996 or 2015 or 2019. It is done outside India. Regarding the Gestum General's rules, same general words like to be treated as confined to other items of the same clause. In this example, to domestic animals. It cannot be taken to lions and tigers. So this is what I told you earlier, a justum generis rule. This will apply to contracts. It will also apply to statutory interpretation. The last one on the right side is the rule of expression. The inclusion of the one is the exclusion of the other. When a list of specific items is not followed by general words, it is to be taken as exhaustive. For example, weekends and public holidays excludes ordinary weekdays. So when you say we'll have a sitting on public holidays, it obviously means you can't have a sitting on ordinary weekdays. Next slide, please. How to read a document. First, as I've been time and again mentioning to you, intention, differing printing words. The intention of the parties should not be defeated by giving to strict meaning to the words used in the instrument. For example, when you say trustees and successor male offsprings, it obviously means the female offsprings are not included. So you must have a strict understanding. For example, managing director or his successor, it only means managing director's successor and not director's successor. If there is a difference between the words and figures, the written words will prevail. At the same time, if there is a difference between printed and written words, the written words will prevail, because as you sign, you leave the contract. That is, you go after the contract. That's a last minute dash. You add certain words. So the written words gives you the last of your intention. On the right side, inconsistency between the two clauses. Except a case of a will and testament, the earlier part of any document shall prevail. In the case of a will, the later clause will alone prevail, because that's a last will and testament. Because he leaves the world, he adds the last sentence. So in the case of a will, last clause will prevail. In the case of other contracts, earlier clause will prevail. The true nature of the deed will be seen from the contents of the document and not from the name given to it. You may call it as a franchisee agreement, but it could be agency agreement. You may call it agency agreement, it could be shareholders agreement. You could call it family arrangement and partition, it could be settlement deed and gift deed. Next slide, please. Rules of caution and circumstantial evidence. The document should be read strongly against the party preparing the same. For example, you prepare an affidavit. It should be read strongly against him because he did not have any evidence. So he swears in an affidavit. He is willing to get into the witness box to affirm the affidavit. If he makes a mistake, there is a perjury. So document should be strongly read against the party preparing the same. Extrinsic evidence cannot be received to contradict, vary, add to, or subtract from the terms of a deed. For example, a oral partnership permissible in some cases, like in Supreme Court case and Godra's case. Subsequent communications can be looked into. In today's e-commerce, we always say that earlier correspondence can be ignored. Now, in such circumstances, what do you mean by earlier correspondence? Do you mean that if you go to the trail mail, you have to trace the trail mail and so on and so forth? At this point, the recent judgment which has come in Supreme Court about 65B of the Evidence Act in terms of e-commerce is most relevant. It is a highly confusing judgment. They say that even if it is an e-commerce evidence, you have to see as if it is a normal evidence and so on. When a normal evidence is available, nobody need to go to e-commerce evidence, but be that as it may. The Evidence Act of Section 92 Proviso 1, 92 Proviso 2, which I mentioned in both columns, have a relevance or to prove the oral agreement, to prove other circumstances, even though the Evidence Act per se is not applicable to arbitration. Be that as it may, evidence may be given for the existence of any separate oral agreement constituting a condition precedent to the attaching of any obligation. Next slide, please. Usage and custom is most important. For example, Ayodhya case. The whole case, if it had come to arbitration instead of mediation, the usage and custom has got a role to play. You take even Sabarimala's case. You take even the latest Trivandrum temple case. The evidence of usage custom has got a force of law. Even under Section 92 of the Evidence Act, even though it may not apply to arbitration strictly, but it has got a guiding force. The evidence may be given of surrounding circumstances when the facts are such that the language used might have meant to apply to anyone and could not have been meant to apply to more than one or several persons or things. You have to bend to the law or to the facts of the case. For example, evidence may be given of facts which show which of these persons or things it was intended to apply. A agrees to sell to B for ₹1,000 my white horse. A has 2 white horses. Evidence may be given of facts which show which of them was meant by him. Next slide, please. Another illustration is when a language used applies partly to one set of existing facts and partly to another set of existing facts, but the whole of it does not apply correctly. To either evidence may be given to show to which these two was meant. 97 of the Evidence Act on the right side, A agrees to sell B his land at X in the occupation of Y. A has land at X, but not in the occupation of Y. And yet he had land in occupation of Y, but not at X. Evidence may be given of facts and showing which he meant to sell. Next slide, please. This is very interesting doctrines in arbitration law. Arbitration law is very peculiar. Party supremacy. This is one of the rarest laws where you can choose your own court, what we call forum shopping. You can choose your own judge. You can choose your own rule because you are the party, your party supremacy. Pleadings under Section 8 in general gives you that supremacy which no other law gives you. In all other laws, if you start choosing a forum, the court can haul you up. But in arbitration law, you can choose a seat, you can choose a venue, you can choose which law to apply and which law not to apply. Second doctrine is doctrine of public policy, which is narrowly defined in the latest Section 34 of only few cases involving fraud and contravention of fundamental policy. This is very foxing because there's nothing called fundamental policy of Indian law. Is it basic structure of the Constitution? Is it that a reasonable man in India will do in a particular way? Or is it public policy by itself, or etc.? There are interesting judgments of Lord Denning which says public policy is an unruly horse. An unruly horse cannot be controlled. And time, so many 200 years have passed. The law has now evolved into Indian context, and in Section 34, they use the word, it should not be in contravention of fundamental policy. Drinking in India, is it fundamental policy? I don't know. Similarly, constructing a building above the FSI limit, is it fundamental policy if there's any violation? So areas of controversy is going to be much more on the word called fundamental policy. Who has to decide the policy? Which policy of Indian law? Supposing I violate one of the environmental law, then it is fundamental policy of law. If you violate MMDA regulation, that is building regulation, it may be a fundamental policy. But supposing I violate the smallest portion of not installing a solar energy, is it fundamental policy or violation of notion of justice? This is also a very vague word. Ouster of jurisdiction of courts, the time for making an award under Section 29A, even this morning, Supreme Court has said Delhi High Court has said Section 29A is retrospective. So these are every day different laws are being laid down by different courts. That is the most important and fascinating literature or jurisprudence under the arbitration law. The next doctrine called competence principle, it is taken from the German context. This also becomes statutory now under Section 11(6) after 2015 amendment. And by this amendment, they have overruled the earlier judgments. 3 judgments have given you. And this is said to in a public lecture by Justice Indu Malhotra, who is a judge of the Supreme Court now. Now we have fast track arbitration as a mode of disclosure where the arbitration dispute could be resolved on the basis of documents only. Then the rules relating to examination in chief and cross-examination, by and large, the CPC, etc. are being followed. There are also amendments to that effect under the Arbitration Act. You can do like a civil case. The problem here is if a judge sitting in the arbitrator sits and decides case only as a judge of the High Court, then it becomes highly hyper-technical. They are not coming down like an ordinary arbitrator, like a panchayat or even a chief engineer will do a better arbitration. Too much of technicality on law is being imposed in the name of examination in chief and cross examination. Then of interim relief under section 9 and 17, you have the judgment of Hero Wind Energy, where it was held that a party can approach the court for interim relief even after the establishment of arbitral tribunal if there is a dispute arising subsequently. This is most important. Dispute arising subsequently after the same agreement. So the wording in the agreement, the interpretation of the agreement does not stop only with one document. That is why this topic is of utmost importance. You have to interpret agreement like a Bible, like a mantra. And if there are cogent agreements, collateral documents, all those documents have to sing the same song. And the Supreme Court, this is a clarification of the judgment reported on 7/7/2020 last week. There's something called anti-arbitration injunction, which is being prevalent even internationally in order to stop the arbitration proceedings. Next slide, Ashok. Some of the common expressions in arbitration jurisprudence is very interesting. Ex parte, that means it's an absence of the party. Ex arbitri, what is the seat of arbitration? It's highly controversial in section 20. Lex mercatoria, it's an arbitration clauses based on usage of trade and equity clauses. Non obstance, section 5 and 42 regarding part 1 of the international and domestic awards. Quia time injunction is a Latin word which says that I think I have no case, so I must get an injunction even before the arbitration starts. There's something called umbrella clause, which is a bilateral protection treaties entered into two countries. As observance of the undertaking clause, they call it as umbrella clause. On the right side, you have another Latin word called amiable compositor. It's a notion of equity arbitration, amiable compositor, and ex aequo et bono. Section 28(2) of 1996 is possible only through agreement by the parties to apply equitable principles. As I told you, party primacy. They can also say, please decide the case on equitable principles. They can still do that. Then you have de facto, de jure, which means in fact or in law. Then you have functus officio. That means you are no longer in, the powers have been over. Your job is all right. Then res judicata, estoppel. Then fork in the road provisions. In the context of bid provisions, preclude investors from switching fora. Jurisdictional bar is a consequence. Next one. Interesting case of Supreme Court is Perkins, which is the landmark judgment now on conflict of interest theory, where you can't hold the same person with an interest involve himself in the arbitration either as a litigant or as an arbitrator. In fact, most of the companies where the managing director chooses the arbitrator, now these judgments have made it very clear they cannot involve themselves in the organization to choose an arbitrator. Section 87 is struck down as manifestly arbitrary in Hindustan Construction Company, where Supreme Court says that. And Section 11, whether a lease deed, is also an interesting point, whether a lease deed which is not sufficiently stamped can be used if there is an arbitration clause contained therein. The Supreme Court has again said recently, when a lease deed or any other instrument is relied upon as containing the arbitration agreement, court is required to consider at the outset whether the document is properly stamped or not. If they find it is not properly stamped, the entire arbitration goes. So friends, an arbitrator has to see when was a stamp paper bought, in whose name, whether it is properly stamped, is it executed on a proper date with a seal, sign, and delivered with witnesses. If any of these things are missing, that's a point an arbitrator should diligently take into consideration. The next argument on the right side is the interesting, next slide. Sorry, on the right side is an interesting case where whether there can be a valid arbitration clause providing for arbitration claims of one of the party and providing for the remedy to the court or any other forum for claims of the other party. I mean, there's something like a cross claim. Section 7 permits classification of disputes, but do not permit classification of claims. I claim for X, other party claims for Y. That is not permissible. It's the interesting judgment. It's worth reading. The next judgment on the right side, SSIPL, the arbitration clause can be waived by a party under dual circumstances. It's quite very interesting. I thought it's not possible in law. Now Supreme Court says so. One, by filing a statement or defense or submitting to jurisdiction. And secondly, by unduly delaying the filing of the application under 8, by not filing the same till the date by which the statement of defense could have been filed. Commercial Courts Act implications are also discussed. The last judgment on the right side is very interesting, where Supreme Court has upheld the dissenting arbitrators award, which is a rarity. And instead of sending the case back to the arbitrators, Supreme Court invoked Article 142 of the Constitution of India and called it substantial complete justice, which is now unsurprisingly is another judicial activism. Every case is being performed under Article 142 for the mere asking. The next slide, please. This is most important. A mediator and an arbitrator. You must have these qualities. A patience of a job. The word job is also taken from Bible. One Mr. Job had all the patience and tolerance. So an arbitrator must have a patience of a job. The sincerity and building characteristics of the Englishman, the wit of the Irish, the physical endurance of a marathon runner, the broken field dodging abilities of a halfback, the guile of Machiavelli, the personality probing skills of a good psychiatrist, the confidence retaining characteristics of a mute, the hide of a rhinoceros, the wisdom of Solomon. Next slide, please. The demonstrated integrity and impartiality, basic knowledge and belief in the negotiation process, firm faith in voluntarism in contrast to dictation, fundamental belief in human values and potential, tempered by ability to assess personal weakness as well as strengths, hard-nosed ability to analyze what might be desirable, sufficient personal drive and ego qualified by willingness to be self-effacing. These are the qualities of a mediator, applies to an arbitrator as well. Next one, please. The general rules of interpretations are crucial. Non-exclusive arbitration agreements is most important, which includes there are certain provisions which are carved out that reserve the parties right to go to court in respect of certain types of claim or relief. For example, you take Sabarimala's case, women cannot go to court, which carves out the provisions. Can they take it in a similar context of arbitration agreement? A citizen of Chennai cannot enter into this particular area. So these are the carved out exclusive, non-exclusive clauses are most important. They also give something called exceptions. If you come before 5 o'clock in the evening, I'll allow you inside. So that type of exceptions is what the arbitrator has to look into. How do we get justice to this particular case? A crucial aspect in this regard is which law should apply with regard to the interpretation of arbitration agreement. Next slide, please. Possible arguments of choice of law. It could have been argued that the choice of law clause applied only to the underlying contract, as this agreement was separable. This is what I told you, doctrine of Cyprus. If this agreement is separable from the arbitration agreement, you can always say I'm applying only to that document. However, this could have been disputed as the parties probably wanted to extend the choice of law clause to all provisions of the contract. Supposing X contract mentioned Y, Y mentions Z, Z mentions X again, all the three that clause choice of law clauses can apply. However, it does not seem right to sustain that arbitration agreements and the choice of law clauses are established in favor of only one of the parties when there is no express indication or evidence of this. This is where the importance of implied conditions, express conditions apply. Possible, next slide. An important aspect of correct development of international commercial arbitration is a uniform enforcement of arbitration agreement. There should be a direct application of judicial enforcement, and it should not be governed by law of the Judicial Enforcement Forum, because internationally it is considered to be Judicial Enforcement Forum. And lastly, if a national law is to be applied, the interpretation of an international arbitration agreement should generally be subject to the law applicable to the existence and substantive validity of that agreement. Always, if it is international law, which means Indian law, should prevail. This approach will become more uniform result. There will be consistency according to International Commercial Arbitration author. International commercial arbitration agreements are to be construed in accordance with general principles of contractual interpretation. The dominant methodology for assessing the validity of arbitration has got two of these principles. The next slide, please. The two principles are, first, the broad interpretation, which requires the tribunal refrain from using an approach and rather adopt a contextual approach. These are the judgments. Second, the effective interpretation principle requires that when faced with more than one possible intended meaning, the tribunal choose the interpretation that both gives specific effect to the words used. These are the judgments. Lastly, the tribunal must look beyond the literal text. These are the judgments, and arbitration clause to ascertain the parties' real intentions and give effect to them. These are the judgments. Next slide. The Andhra Pradesh High Court, as in 12th March 2015, I'm unable to get the citation. It says that no doubt the courts are bound to interpret a document or clauses in a document if the language used in the clause or document is ambiguous as per settled principle of interpretation of document. Next page. What they call principles of effective interpretation. Their judgment also quotes some of the foreign cases. This is all independent to those cases. The principle of effective interpretation mandates that the rules be, I'm not able to read it on the right side. The Swiss Supreme Court held an arbitration clause that unambiguously referred to arbitration, but mentioned three possible sets of rules to be followed. If an arbitration clause is not clear, then there is nothing called the effective interpretation is the arbitration cannot go on at all. In Lucky Gold Star, Hong Kong, the agreement only stipulated that arbitration should be undertaken in a third country. They have not said what is third country. Again, the arbitration goes. Third case, the High Court of Hong Kong, earlier slide. High Court of Hong Kong upheld the clause as to the reference to non-existent arbitration institution and rules. The court said if the institution is not available, how will you implement this clause? The last case, the defective portion of the clause can then be ignored. This is what we call doctrine of Cyprus, or separating from the document instead of completely defeating the party's intention to arbitrate disputes. Next slide, please. The dictionary meaning of the word can be used by an arbitrator, but a peculiarity is, what does the word's meaning mean? When you say meaning, what do you mean by meaning? Does it mean the literal meaning of the words used, or does it mean the meaning of the writer of the words had in mind? That is his intention, whether it means one or two. The process would be that in the case of two, intention has to be ascertained by reference to the words used to express it. Unexpressed intention has not to be considered, but courts can consider presumed intention. I'll give an example. One person wanted to leave a will of a horse, which he was winning horse races. He valued the horse at $10 million. He wrote a will appointing his wife as the beneficiary and an executor. The will said, if you sell the horse, whatever money you give it to charity. So this clever woman, what she did was she went to the market and asked what is the value of the horse. They said $10 million. The next day, what she did was she took the horse and a small cat. She went and told the public, I'll give this horse for 1 rupee if you give me $9,99,000 for a cat. So she got over the interpretation of the will by selling the horse for 1 rupee and spent for charity. So she honored the will. She got the money because she sold the cat instead of the horse. Next slide, please. The modern law of interpretation has got twofold. One, to ascertain the intention, because time and again we're using the same word called intention, to consider what the parties intended to have said or ought to have said, but did not, either because they never visualized such a state of circumstances arising. Then next, the task of interpretation would be easy if it were just to discover the intention of the parties as expressed in words. But the task of the arbitrator is to ascertain what the parties would have said or what they would have intended if the point had been considered by them at that time. Next slide, please. Next slide on. Presumptive intention. See, an attempt to interpret the terms of document, sometimes the arbitrator can use some presumptions. Now, there are no statutory rules of interpretation, as I told you. The courts have laid down saying that, look, you can't use your own imagination. You can't use your own presumption. In the last, they said, all right, we'll give you some guidance called Odger's construction of documents and statutes, which they list out certain rules. Next slide. Odgers is an authority like Maxwell on interpretation. The Supreme Court in India and Delhi Development Authority, 73 Supreme Court, has said Odgers is a well-known authority on this. You follow these rules. Number one, the meaning of the document or of a particular part is therefore to be sought from the document itself. Intention may prevail over the words. Words are to be taken in the literal meaning. Literal meaning depends on the circumstances. Just 1 minute. When is extrinsic evidence admissible to translate the language? Technical legal terms will have the legal meaning. Therefore, the deed is to be construed as a whole. Apart from the said 7 rules listed by Odger, it would be convenient to list the following rules for the sake of convenience, or called additional rules, and given number of continuation. Next slide. This is what Andhra Pradesh High Court added something more. It said, same words to be given same meaning, harmonious construction, which is National Fertilizers case, contra preferendum. If 2 interpretations are possible, the one favorable to the other part, to the party who has drafted the contract, and the other against him, the interpretation against that party has to be preferred, not applicable to commercial contracts. This is very, very strange, because each contract, in fact, each arbitration in each branch of subject is got a different interpretation. It's just not easy to apply like SOP. It's just not possible to say specified operating procedure for all the contracts. A contract involving arbitration on lease document cannot be the same interpretation a contract on technological development or turnkey contracts. 11. If 2 interpretations of a contract are possible, the one which helps to make the contract operative to be preferred to the other which tends to make it inoperative. Courts and arbitrators should reasonably understand the contracting parties' minds and intents. Mind is different from intent. What is mind is mens rea. In criminal law, what we call mental element. And intent is the conduct, the parties' consensus ad idem, as we call it in contract. In case of conflict between printed clause and typed clauses, I already told you earlier. Next slide, please. The special will exclude the general. The rule of expression, unis est exclusion ulterius. The rule of nociter associate. All these are Latin words to show that each word takes the color from the earlier word. Each word where the act or the contract uses it. For example, if it is a definition clause, it will apply throughout the contract. If it is in the last clause, it will not apply to the earlier clauses. 17. Place of punctuation in interpretation of documents is very, very important. If you put a comma, it is a continuous sentence. If you put a full stop, you really mean 2 different ideas. If you put a semicolon, you can say a general pass. If you put a colon, it becomes 2 sentences. It's all very interesting. And if you put within inverted commas, that means you really mean. Supposing I say I am giving a lecture on Seneca, I mean Seneca and nothing else. From the rules stated above, when the language used in a document is unambiguous, conveying clear meaning. The court has to interpret the document or any condition therein, taking into consideration of the literal meaning to the words. Where there is an ambiguity, intention has to be looked into. But if the words are not clear or ambiguous, intention will prevail. Next one, please. Therefore, if the language used in a document is unambiguous, the words used in the document itself. If there is nothing unambiguous, then according to, in the particular case of Mr. Subbarao, the court has come to a particular conclusion. The arbitration clause is limited to the extent to refer the document, and the court need not look into the intention in such cases. If the clause is very clear, there is no need to look into the intention. Next slide, please. Analysis of word. As Mr. The chairman of Telangana Chamber of Commerce and as well as Mr. Saravanan said, the word may, can, shall, all these are doubtful words. If you put it in the wrong place, it means a lot of difference. There is one anecdote I want to tell you. A man put a board in the beach and he said, the fish is sold here. Someone came and said, what is this? You're using the word the fish. Fish is after all a creature. Don't use the word the. So he said he removed the word the. Fish is sold here. Then someone came and told him the word sold means past tense. Remove the word sold. So he said fish is here. The third person came and said when the fish is here, where else it will be? The word, remove the word also here. Then the word was fish is. They said when the fish is dead, where is the question of is? Then they removed that also. Then lastly, one person came and said, I know it is a fish. Why do you want to put a board? So they removed all that. So ladies and gentlemen, if you put a wrong word in a wrong place or a right word in the wrong place, it's got a lot of distance. In an arbitration context, if you say, I have the laws of Telangana only, then only Telangana law will apply. If you say arbitrator only can decide which state, then it is not Telangana only. Third, only Telangana, only arbitrator to decide, it's got some meaning. So the word only, if you put it in different places, can definitely change the context of the next the court also contribute to this confusion in judicial scrutiny. Next slide, please. Certain reference to the courts in KK Modi, for example, Supreme Court said the attributes or essential elements of an arbitration agreement is spelled out. It was held a clause in a contract can be construed as an arbitration agreement only if an agreement to refer disputes or differences to arbitration is expressly or impliedly spelled out. Simply mentioning arbitration, they said no, it is not arbitration at all. You have to say, I want to resolve through arbitration. Last line. Also held where there's a merely a possibility of the parties agreeing to arbitration in future as contrasted from an obligation to refer disputes to arbitration, there is no valid and binding arbitration agreement. So ladies and gentlemen, unless your contract says, I want to arbitrate, the arbitration clause itself is invalid. Next slide, please. Guidelines noted by some of the judgments are fundamental guidelines given in Jagdish Chandra's case. Then the clauses provides that in event of disputes arising between the parties, disputes shall be referred to arbitration. This is the simple clause. But where the clause relating to settlement of disputes contains words which specifically exclude any of the attributes of an arbitration agreement or contains anything that detracts from an arbitration agreement, it will not be an arbitration agreement. So mind you, the wording should be very careful. Simple word, I want to go under arbitration agreement. Next slide, please. Some of the following cases very interesting on Linde Heavy. In that case, either party may require that the dispute be referred to resolution by arbitration, which is neither here nor there. There the court said they refer the same to arbitration. Such clause would not constitute a binding arbitration agreement. It requires a fresh consent. That means an arbitration clause involving a fresh consent is no arbitration clause at all, according to Supreme Court. The last line, the word contained is may, does not constitute a binding arbitration agreement. In the latest case in 2004, again, Kirti Mehta's case, they said clauses 4 and 5 of the arbitration agreement prescribed. The next slide, please. That mere use of the word arbitration or arbitrator will not make an arbitration agreement. In the second paragraph, such clauses merely indicate a desire or a hope to have the dispute settled. Next line, please. This is also a case of arbitration agreement involving Rent Control Act. Somebody has put in the chat box, Ms. Narasimhan. The judgment of Supreme Court has gone to a larger bench. Supreme Court says if there is a special enactment called rent control, should you go by that? Do you have Consumer Forum? You have IBC. You have CPC. So the judgments are conflicting, is still pending in the larger bench of the Supreme Court. The next aspect on top is the position of Indian law in this regard as to what constitutes an arbitration agreement is highly conflicting. Like Linde case I mentioned to you, that either party may require dispute referred. Agreement between the parties provide in the event of any dispute, they may refer same, etc., and a fresh consent. It's a repeat but different case law. Next slide, please. In this is another case of dispute of quota straw boards, where it was held that a fresh consent was necessary. In other words, you think you have written a beautiful agreement with an arbitration clause, but if it involves the smallest change of facts, that's why I'm saying this particular law is not necessarily law. It is on facts. It's not like a civil case where facts are disputed. For example, somebody puts a counterclaim, the whole case gets changed, whole agreement gets changed, whole law gets changed. In the case of Jodhi Brothers, the arbitration clause of Calcutta High Court said, in the event of any dispute arising out of this contract, the same can be settled by arbitration. It will be a Chamber of Commerce at Madras. The decision shall be binding. Holding that the arbitration clause extracted above was not a valid arbitration agreement, Calcutta High Court said the word can, by the most liberal interpretation, only indicate a possibility. Of course, in 1956, several judgments have come, but the position is, if your agreement is not clear, the arbitration clause goes. Next slide, please. In PowerTex, Supreme Court has said that an additional factor to establish the existence of an arbitration agreement, the dispute resolution clause provided, any dispute arising out of this purchase contract shall be settled amicably between both parties through an arbitrator in India or UAE. The court held there existed consensus ad item between the disputed party amicably to settle the dispute through arbitration in India or UAE. Also, notwithstanding the judgment in Jagdish Chandar, the correspondence letters signifies that the petitioner invoked the arbitration and the respondent did not refute the same. Now the courts are thinking in terms of two-tier arbitration. One-tier arbitration in India, second-tier arbitration in abroad. This is all very evolutionary even today. So recent judgments, last 6 years, if you see, all the judgments of Supreme Court are really fascinating. Next slide, please. Thus, along with the requirements of factors to be considered to determine the existence of arbitration agreement, court said additional factor has to be proved. In Castrol's case, Supreme Court said, though the arbitration clause used the words shall have the right, the court held that the said wordings are only optional in nature. Even though I use the word shall have the right, the court said it's an optional, either to go for civil court or refer the matter to the arbitration, and further observed that there is no definite intention. So ultimately, it is the party supremacy to specifically define the intention. Further, unless there is a definite intention, the court cannot come to your rescue. In Avante Guardian case, the arbitration dispute, if any, arising out of this agreement, shall be subject to the exclusive jurisdiction in city of Delhi. Next line, please. The Delhi High Court held the above clause merely is not intended to act on. The main body of the clause does not even contemplate for arbitration. The submission of the petitioner is that the word may used in so and so should be construed as shall was rejected. The next slide, please. Therefore, in US and UK courts addressing the question of the language, the may submit a dispute requires mandatory arbitration and not just permissive the courts held that the arbitration clause mandated arbitration because if it did not, it would render the clauses meaningless for all practical purposes, since the parties could always voluntarily submit to arbitration. Next, court decisions holding that earlier one. The court decisions holding that arbitration was mandatory once demanded by the either party, even though arbitration clause used the word may in these cases. Therefore, arbitration clause have to be given the broadest possible interpretation, but the language should be very, very clear. Next slide, please. In view of the above discussion, it is clear and conclusive that an arbitration agreement is to be followed with settled principles whereby specific and direct expression of the parties should be clear, precise in the terms of the clause. Disclosing a determination is the most crucial thing. Whereas any agreement or clause in the agreement requiring or contemplating a further consent or consensus before a reference to arbitration is not an arbitration agreement, but an agreement to enter into an arbitration agreement in future. Such agreement would not be a valid agreement. Next slide, please. Tidbits. So recently, the fishermen were caught. Now, the international UNCLO says, Article 56 says, every country has sovereign rights within EEZ, that is the exclusive economic zone, including the right to exploit natural resources, living or non-living. On the right side, shooting took place in 2012 within that Indian EEZ. Despite that, the arbitrary tribunal came to the conclusion that Italy had not violated India's sovereign right. This observation is given only in the context of specific incident of Entica Lexi, an Italian oil tanker, where in held that a vessel can take action to protect itself from what it assumed was an attack by pirates. Next line, please. Conclusion, allow me to read the full thing. Richard Hill, a highly competent and dedicated arbitration lawyer from Switzerland, said, two persons have a legitimate claim to an orange, but neither of them is willing to accept the orange. If the claim is resolved in accordance with the judicial paradigm, one will get some portion, possibly none of the orange, and the other will get the remaining portion. But then a mediator is called. A mediator was called. The mediator who asks each person what they intend to do with the orange. The first person answers that she intends to use the rind to make perfume, while the second answers that she intends to use the pulp to make orange juice. Hence, the mediation process yields a solution that is fair and better, satisfy the interests of the parties than could any solution based on adversarial process. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I enjoyed my presentation, and I want to thank organizers for giving an opportunity. I'm extremely sorry for this commercial break and commercial. In all, we always say that arbitrator should have patience of a donkey, or a speaker should have patience of a donkey, and I had the patience of a donkey today. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ashok.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. In fact, more thanks goes to the connectivity now. And it became better and better as the speech went on. You know, maybe it got addicted to the topic, and it became more and more viable. And as of now, I will just check out if there is any questions. Since I was in the sharing, I could not find any questions.
I found one question about Rent Control Act.
Yes, that you had mentioned.
I mentioned, yes. Yeah.
So beyond that, I don't find any questions.
Yes, I have one question, Ashok.
Yes,
Question
please.
relating to Perkins case, and the participant is expecting your views.
What is it? I didn't get you.
The
The
participants
Supreme
are
Court's
told-
decision are in a
Okay, I'll explain. I believe a participant is expecting your view on the Perkins case.
Perkins case, I'll tell you what, it's very interesting. We are having a lot of problems on day to day. Now, let me give an example. You know that BCCI case, there's a conflict of interest. After that, this type of judgment came, Justice Indu Malhotra. I think she has rendered this judgment. She said, if a managing director of a company who will get something out of the arbitration dispute is an interested party. He cannot appoint an arbitrator. So they said, instead of putting the word bias, they said he is not competent, which really means bias. Now that Perkins case is creating a lot of problems, even in-house arbitration. For example, National HAA Authority, we recently had a discussion in Mussoorie. I delivered a seminar. Somebody stood up and said, our retired employee, sir, he retired yesterday. This morning he was sitting in my chair and said, I want to become an arbitrator. Am I wrong in giving arbitration? Of course you're wrong. Perkins goes to that extent of saying direct or indirect benefit, the arbitration fails. As simple as that. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If you're not clear, tell me, I'll give you. I'll give you an answer.
Sir, Anand has posted a question in the chat box privately, though he has asked me to ask you. I'll read out the question, sir. The Honorable Apex Court in Sangyong judgment held that the amendments to 34 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act would apply to appeals made after the date of the 2015 amendment, even though the arbitration proceedings has commenced prior to the date of which the amendment, but however, by invoking Article 142 of the Constitution, overturned the award and stepped into the shoes of the arbitrator and upheld the minority's decision. Is this not a dangerous precedent for judicial intervention for upholding minority decision? Is it not a contrasting stand and juxtaposition?
I entirely agree with Anand. I'm appointing as a judge. The reason is, see, if you read the judgment, the judge, Justice Rohinton Nariman, clearly mentions the facts. And he also says, how did the majority come to the conclusion? Simple. What happened was a particular formula was in the website. It was not brought to the notice of the arbitrators. So the minority judge went to the site and then took the government clarification and passed an award. Then the majority said it is not brought to our knowledge, so we will not look into it. The Supreme Court says, why can't look into the net? And nothing wrong in looking at the government clarification, and the lower court is wrong. Even the division bench is wrong. So the minority award is correct. But he went too far. I mean, sorry, with great respects. He went on Article 142 and said, normally we would have sent it back, but we don't want to send it back. He gives the reasons. He said complete justice. See, the complete justice, if you see the Article 141 and 142, the language. 141, whatever Supreme Court says is law. In 142, is it law? But it's Allah. In the sense, he goes beyond God. And he gives something which he ought not have said that. And now every second, the same thing was attempted under Article 227 in the High Court recently, in the COVID times, to give a motor vehicles compensation. The judge said, I also invoke 227, which is the same spirit as Article 142. If you compare 142 and 227, the word complete justice is not there at all. Now, Supreme Court again has said in another context, High Court cannot do under 227, but we can do under 142. So you are right, Anand. I'm appointing you as a judge to overrule this case.
Okay. There's one person, Ritika wants to ask a question. I've unmuted you. You can ask.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. So I had noticed in your PPT that an arbitrator should also have the trait of Machiavelli. Machiavelli is known as an administrator who was sly and devious in running the state, especially with respect to his political and international affairs. So I was wondering if it is actually necessary for an arbitrator to be sly and devious, and if so, why?
Madam, my hats off to your knowledge in literature. I'm zero in literature. Now, actually, it is for mediators, but I am trying to use a mediator as good as an arbitrator, whether Machiavelli or even Job or the other person. You are right, because I'm saying is, even a bad man have a good quality. A good man can have a bad quality. It's a blend of, it's more like a bouquet you carry. In a bouquet, you can't choose individual flowers. I suppose shall I give a bouquet to you, madam, through Anand? And my question is answered to you.
Okay.
Yeah, Machiavelli, I don't know him.
All right, thank you, sir.
Was Ashok Pati's daughter? Then, sorry, Anand, you have to
I don't find any further questions. Even in the chat box, I don't find any. Okay, with that, may I now call upon Mr. Anand to give the render the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ashok. At the outset, we are extremely sorry for the technical glitch, and we appreciate the patience and the understanding of the participants. The cooperation with the participants in muting the video to accommodate the bandwidth to the speaker requires a special mention and a sincere thanks and appreciation to the participants. Jaykumar sir has a distinct skill in presentation, interspersed with anecdotes and marked with erudition with pellucid exposition. A veritable feat of super skill and masterful mastery over works exhibiting innate brilliance. Sinica is deeply obliged for accepting our invitation and making a presentation on this very important topic, which forms the edifice of an ADR proceeding. Our heartfelt thanks to the wonderful participants who have been pillars of support in successfully conducting this study series. We are grateful and thankful to our event associate, the Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry, for the graceful support and presence and making this event successful. Thank you one and all. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed as much. Thanks, Anand.
Thank you.
Thanks, Saravanan.
Thank you.
Ashok.
With this, we end the meeting. Thank you.
Ashok, the next week's
Next week's
Uh,
program.
A small announcement. We have in the next week our program. 1 second, I missed it out.
that is on contemporary issues in international arbitration.
Yes, by Mr. Rajat Rana and Radha Raghavan. Both of us have jointly announced it today, and so be please present for the next Friday. But kindly know the timing. It is going to be 6:30 p.m. This is in order to accommodate the speakers who are from New York, and their timing at that point of time is 8:30 or 9 in the morning. So in order to accommodate them, we are having the program at 6:30 p.m. So please be present and have the benefit of the speech. Thank you. Thank you one and all, and I end the meeting with this. Thank you.